Sky, they built a glass paradise way too high. Then the bubble pop, the silent sound of foreclosure signs are all over town. I got a bad loan, a promise they believe. Now the dream is over, they're feeling deceived. I watch from the sidelines, patient and cool, playing by a different set of rules. All I wanna do is, and I've been doing. Capitalism, boom, sweeping up the pieces with the concrete boom. When I do, get a call from my contact, a whisper on the phone. Another empty unit, the speculator is gone. He says a shame with a crocodile tears. He sells me their future for a fraction of last year. The paperwork's easy, a cash only deal. That heartbreak and panic is my next big steal. They get a cardboard box, I get the ocean view. It's nothing personal, it's just what I do. And a casual body, take your condo. And a casual body, and watch the dance. This is straight up capitalism. Chick, chick, boom, sweeping up the pieces with the concrete broom. When I do wrong, when I do wrong, when I do wrong. Some myself ask for a quick return. Some I rent out, let the lesson burn. They call it a crisis, I call it a sale. In this concrete jungle, the strongest prevail. No funny business, I am the business. They sold you a lead, right now I'm the witness. Seek your condo. Seek your condo. Watch the funds grow. Watch the funds grow.
Happy Thursday, Miami. This is Condo Capitalism, a real estate podcast about the distress condo market. Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach counties. Today, going to do a little pivot. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into Boca Raton, the glitzy suburb located southeast Palm Beach County. Why are we doing it? Well, we're coming up on the August 2026 monthly meeting of the Miami Condo Investing Club. In anticipation of that, we're going to take a look at, or we have been taking a look at, what's going on in the first half of the summer buying season, which will go from May through October. Winter buying season is a time when casual buyers come to town. That goes from November through April. Come here for an event. They come here for a cruise. They come here for a vacation. They fall in love with it. They get the bug. They decide to start purchasing, or at least look at maybe buying a second home, doing whatever. Ultimately, a lot of those deals that began in the winter buying season of November through April, they end up closing right now, May through October. So we want to take a look and see what's going on in Boca Raton. This ritzy suburb, which basically took off during the pandemic years of 2021, 2022, 2023, when you didn't have to wear a mask in Florida, even though blue states were mandating it. You could work from home because companies were allowing you to do so. And if you went to Miami Beach, you could twerk on a police car. Well, let's fast forward a few years. What's going on in the Boca Raton condo market? We know all throughout South Florida is a buyer's market. One exception, downtown West Palm Beach Island. We did a podcast on that on Miami Condo Mondays. I did it with my partner, Jenny Wortes, over at CVR Realty. Check out her website, cvrrealty.com. What is going on in Boca Raton? So we decided we were going to do a deep dive, and the best time to do it was today for Condo Capitalism. And what I can tell you from the statistics is it looks like the Boca Raton condo market is starting to unravel as well. What we're seeing across the board, a lot of the pricing, a lot of the purchasing that was really ramped up in 2021, 2022, 2023, tailed off in 2024. It's starting to unravel right now, including in Boca Raton. What is Boca Raton? How does it factor into overall South Florida? Well, Boca Raton's got a very interesting history. A lot of you, when you come down, interesting history. A lot of you, when you come down to South Florida, you're going to see that's architectures. Well, that's pretty much credited. The gentleman who brought it here was an architect, originally out of California, traveled the world. Addison Meisner. There is I don't know, you want to call it a mall, pedestrian area, a city center that was repositioned in downtown Boca Raton. It's called Meisner Place, named after the famous architect who died at the age of 60. A lot of the famous projects you'll find in South Florida, including the Boca Raton Resort, was designed by Addison Meisner. Addison Meisner, just like George America Coral Gables, Carl Fisher, Miami Beach, in the end, during the 1920s Florida land boom, when it went sideways, so did Addison Meisner. Addison Meisner ultimately died in Palm Beach, was buried in California, but still has roots here in South Florida, especially Palm Beach County. We discussed it on Monday, on the Miami Condo Monday episode. Addison Meisner was an eclectic type of individual. He had a pet monkey. It was called Johnny Brown. And Johnny Brown is actually buried, and they have his tombstone right there in Palm Beach Island, right over there in and around downtown Palm Beach, right off of Worth Avenue or so. So real interesting story, a lot of eclectic, a lot of interesting parts. There's a George Merrick, Addison Meisner combination when George Merrick was putting together his development, which would ultimately become Coral Gables. Actually traveled, went up to Boca Raton, went up to Palm Beach County. Well, I should say Palm Beach County. At the time, went up to Palm Beach County and saw Palm Beach Island and was looking in and around to see what exactly was going on and ultimately integrated it, according to books, including one called Bubble in the Sun by Christopher Knowlton. If you guys have not yet read that book, you need to read it. So in today's Condo Capitalism episode, we're not talking distressed real estate. We are talking about Boca Raton. We're going to do a deep dive. We're going to walk you through it. We're going to give you some history. We're going to give you some demographics. We're going to tell you, where does Boca Raton stand today? Little hint, advantage buyer. Sellers, a little bit challenging. The stats can be moving in a variety of different directions. We'll help you to dive into it and get a better understanding of what it's all about in Boca Raton in Southeast Palm Beach County. I'm Peter Zalewski, condo consultant, expert witness, founder of Miami Condo Investment Club. I go live weekdays, 4 o'clock, always talking condos. On Thursdays, we typically talk about the distressed condo market. But again, I got a monthly meeting coming up next Wednesday, 4 o'clock. And in anticipation of that, we're doing deep dives into the major markets of South Florida. Already took a look at Greater Downtown Miami, took a look at West Palm, downtown West Palm Beach and Palm Beach Island. We're doing Boca Raton today. We're going to follow up. We'll do Fort Lauderdale. Also going to get into Miami Beach. We'll have that, and Hollywood, Hallandale, some of the key large markets in terms of tonnage, as they say, related to condos. Give everybody a glimpse as to what's going on in the marketplace. So I should tell you, you're watching this live as a result. You're going to see everything for free. However, once the podcast is over, we're going to edit it for sound. We'll edit it for template, and then we'll make it available on demand. To see it on demand, you're going to have to be a member of the Miami Condo Investing Club. If you want information on the club, go to miamicondo.club. We're basically building an ecosystem for those people who are interested in condo information, straightforward information, not Chamber of Commerce talk, not sell-side hyperbole where trees go to the moon. No, we're going to give you just lowdown as to what's going on in the marketplace, and then you can take that information and do whatever it is you want to do, whether you're a DIY buyer trying to do it yourself. Maybe you're a buyer working with a broker and you want to get a second opinion. Maybe you're a listing agent, can't sell a property, can't figure out why. You could be a lender, put money on the street. You're not sure. Should we go ahead and push it? Is that property really going to appreciate what's going on with rents? Consider joining the club. Maybe you're a regulator trying to get a sense of what is going on in the marketplace, and or you could be curious and simply a gadfly. Everybody's invited to join the Miami Condo Investing Club. Go to miamicondo.club. Let's go ahead. We're going to share our screen. We're going to start off first and foremost, I think with something that really kind of pegs what is at least a reputation of Boca Raton. Any of you who remember a TV series, let me just pull this up. We're going to share this screen because I think it's a great way to sort of introduce it. I don't know what the copyright issues are like right now with some of the different social media sites. So we're just going to share an image, and I think it'll sort of capture it. So what we're looking at there, and anybody's looking at it, you're seeing George Costanza's parents. And why are we showing you George Costanza's parents? And let me bring myself in on this layout. 1 second, everybody. Sorry, we got a little bit of a different system going on. There we go. So why are we looking at George Costanza's parents? Well, One of the big things for New Yorkers for the longest time was to go down to Boca Raton. Boca Raton was the destination for those people who wanted to retire. You had a country club type of community. You had the golf. You had the early bird lunch, early bird dinner, which almost felt like lunch. When I first got to South Florida in the 1990s, you still had early bird dinners going on in Boca Raton. And what was it? Well, basically about 3 o'clock or so, 3 to 4, maybe 4:30. They'd serve dinner early. And as a result of discounted prices, what happened? A lot of the seniors came rolling in to take advantage of it and to, they tend to go to bed a little bit later, a little bit earlier than most. As a result of that, that's what they were doing. So the big deal for a long time was Boca Raton was a retiree type of destination. No longer the case. Been changed completely. And if anybody wants to get a glimpse of what it's like, go ahead on YouTube and look up Del Boca Vista, look up Seinfeld, look up Boca Raton. You guys are a good son. So I just wanted to address that. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and let's stop sharing this. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring up a map of Boca Raton. Once you guys get a sense of where Boca Raton is located, some of you might have heard of it, but maybe you don't necessarily know where exactly it is. So let me go ahead and try to share my screen. Bear with me as I move around here. So I'm sharing my screen. We're going to show you Boca Raton. There we go. And again, I need to do the layout portion. Let's see the layout. There we go. All right. So Boca Raton, we're going to zoom out a little bit, and I will give you guys our boundaries, and we'll also sort of show you. So here's drilling out pretty far. You guys can see South Florida. You see Lake Okeechobee over here. If you go due east of Lake Okeechobee on Okeechobee Road, you're going to end up in downtown West Palm Beach. You end up in Palm Beach Island. This is where all Big Sugar is. If you guys don't know, Lake Okeechobee used to drain. It still does now, but it's all been sort of remastered. Drains down through the center, ultimately dumps in Florida Bay, which is separated in and around by the Keys, and this is where the national park is, the Everglades National Park. So Boca Raton, in order to get a sense of it, you guys can see you got West Palm Beach up here, you got Miami down here. It's about 45 miles to go from Miami to Boca Raton. Boca Raton will be located right on the border of Broward County. Let's zoom in here. See Pompano, you guys will see Fort Lauderdale, there's Wilton Manors, Pompano Beach. We go up here, then we got Deerfield Beach. Deerfield Beach was famous. El Capone, Deerfield Beach, when El Capone got run out of Miami, supposedly stuff was going on there, but that's a different story. So there's a little canal here that separates Broward County from Palm Beach County. We can get a little glimpse of it. Here you go. It's going to be somewhere in and around here. And on the north side of the canal is going to be Boca Raton. Palm Beach County, south side is going to be Broward County and Deerfield Beach. So Boca Raton will effectively go from the Atlantic for our purposes. It's going to go from the Atlantic to I-95. Okay, then it'll be Deerfield Beach, and we're going to include parts of Broward County because we always look for natural boundaries or natural areas, if you will. So you're going to see Hillsborough Beach Boulevard or Hillsborough Boulevard. Basically, if you get off I-95, you head on over and ultimately dump you into Barrier Island. And to the north is going to be Boca Raton. To the south is basically Deerfield Beach. So for our purposes, pulling stats, we're taking 95 to the Atlantic. We're taking Hillsborough, which is this street right here. And then we're going to take it all the way up to, where is it? Lenton Boulevard's too far. Spanish River Boulevard. There you go, everybody. So it's going to Spanish River Boulevard. And this is an area, for what it's worth, you got Florida Atlantic University. I guess the U.S. Military had a runway there. They had a center there for, I think it was World War II. And as a result of that, afterwards, ultimately, they created the university and it was all handed over. So this will be Boca Raton. This is going to be really sort of the heart of it. Again, just north of Deerfield Beach. And it's going to be just south of, effectively, Delray Beach and Boynton Beach before you ultimately get up to Lake Worth. And then you get into West Palm Beach, if you will. So, again, going back to Boca Raton, giving you guys a little glimpse. We're going to show you Meisner Park. Meisner Park is going to be located here. I want to say it was an old bus depot that they were able to reposition. It had run into some real issues at the time, and ultimately the city stepped forward and they turned it into this pedestrian mall. You guys can see there's this walkway. There's an amphitheater down at the end. They got some restaurants. You guys can see there's a yard house, other things. But that basically is going to be Boca Raton. This is a development that was actually put together. It was the brainchild of Addison Meisner. Addison Meisner was a famous architect. Boca Raton, I should say, was basically the result of this famous architect who had a lot of success. He was getting hired to design Spanish revival, Spanish Mediterranean revival, architecture, whatever you want to sort of refer to it. It was kind of like a hybrid of what he had seen over in Spain when he was, I think, traveling and maybe studying. He brought it back, he applied it to South Florida, and ultimately it took over. It became the rage. A lot of people who come to South Florida, they see that Mediterranean style. A lot of it comes back from Addison Meisner. Addison Meisner came down to Palm Beach County. Why? When Henry Flagler, when he first brought his train down, Meisner came down here. I think he was somewhere in the ballpark in his 40s or so. Ultimately, it's like 6'2", 250. He was told by his doctor, for health reasons, you need to change the way your lifestyle was. So he moves down to Palm Beach County. Ultimately, thought he might be dying, and ends up living and building the successful business until he didn't. Ultimately, it all goes well. He launches Boca Raton 1925 or so. Market ends up crapping out 1926 January 10th, 1926 in Miami. There is a tall ship coming through. It tips on its side, called the Prince Valdemar. Basically locks up, jams up all of the construction materials that were coming to Miami. The trains Henry Flagler was bringing down. There was an embargo on bringing construction materials because there's so many passengers coming down. Ultimately freezes the market. People start to get the wind of maybe, hey, maybe all this hustle that's going on. There's not enough buyers downstream to take everybody out who had positions. Then it's followed up by a hurricane, September 1926, a great Miami hurricane, 1926, and that ultimately represents the end of the Great Florida land boom. In the book Bubble and Sun, Christopher Knowlton, the author, argues that is what ultimately led to Black Friday on the stock market, and then decisions by the president at the time to put in place tariffs and to try to take a protectionist type of position ultimately led to what would become the Great Depression. President who made those decisions was no one else but Hoover, hence the name Hoovervilles. All these people were basically, crapping out. They didn't have jobs. There were soup lines. They were living in these shanty towns, basically called Hoovervilles. So, just kind of give you some perspective. So let's take a little bit of a look at Addison Meisner, and then from there we'll go to Boca Raton, where we kind of are today. So let me stop sharing this screen, and we're going to show you guys Addison Meisner, just so you get a sense. Don't forget his Johnny Brown as the name of his monkey, who's buried up in Palm Beach Island on Worth Avenue. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to share my screen. Let me find this. Bear with me 1 second. And to share my screen, I have to go to, let's see here. It's going to be that one. And there we go. All right. That is Addison Meisner, for anybody who is wondering, what does he look like? You know what? I need to show my face. There we go. So this is Addison Meisner. Addison Cairns Meisner. Cairns, interesting. That's the name of the port town when you go out to go diving on the Great Barrier Reef in Australia and northeast Queensland. Cairns. And the Aussies pronounce it Cairns, even though it looks like Carnes. I spent some time there. I was working there. But real quick glimpse on Addison Meisner. Died in 1933. Remember, everybody, Great Florida land boom. It gets rocking and rolling in the 1920s. We're coming out of World War I, coming out of a pandemic. At the time, they called it the Spanish flu. We had supply chain issues, all kinds of stuff. And then once it all broke, people felt as if, they had to refocus. They had to rethink their lives. They want to do a bunch of different things. You also had the Volstead Act, which basically outlawed alcohol. Well, everywhere but South Florida. Tampa, other places like that. Let's call it Florida. So people came down here. They could do whatever the hell they wanted. When they went back home, they had to maintain a certain position. They came down here. They did what they wanted. And that ultimately was contributing to what were the go-go days in the 1920s. In Florida, we had the introduction of credit. Remember, GM, General Motors, it's the one that introduced financing. Financing was brought online. Then he had a company, the predecessor to Amazon, a company called Sears Roebuck. They allowed financing. Then you had what would become Citigroup, Citibank. They allowed financing for buying and selling stock. So a lot of people were getting wealthy. They were borrowing money. They were buying stuff. The quality of life had risen. They were coming out of World War I. It was just basically a whole enlightenment type of era. And because they had money and they all thought they could make money in real estate, a lot of them came to Florida. Florida was the wilderness. Florida was the go-go area. Florida was the one that created all of these opportunities. People come flooding down into South Florida. Many of them drove down. Dixie Highway. We all know the Dixie Highway. That's actually an invention of no one else but Carl Fisher. Carl Fisher, gentleman who basically put Miami Beach on the map. He was a gearhead. He was a somebody who was into cars. Made his money basically on a patent related to headlights for automobiles. Ultimately took some of the cash, set up the Indianapolis 500. Was banking, came down, bought a piece of dirt, did some lending, and ultimately created Miami Beach. And others followed because there was so much money to be made at the time. One of the guys who came down was Addison Meisner. So Addison Meisner comes down. He gets hired to go ahead and design a bunch of different houses. It catches on. He decides he's going to break off on his own at some point and set up Boca Raton. So rather than doing the architecturals and then the building, he actually set up a manufacturing factory for some of the materials that he needed created because he simply couldn't find them here. Stuff that would have been replicas of from Spain. He couldn't get them here, so he started building them on his own, and then he was able to not only design the buildings, but then he could build them and he could also sell the materials. So was having some success. You guys can see here from his picture. Born in December of 1872, died February the 5th of 1933, died in Palm Beach, and ultimately he is buried in California. Let's see what else it says. Here we go. Some of the notable works he did. He did the Everglades Club over in Palm Beach Island. He did a building that, talk about in a lot of books called El Mirasol. There's pictures. Also did the Boca Raton Resort and Club. And look at this. The home, the Winter White House of John F. Kennedy on Palm Beach Island. He was the architect of that. Let's scroll down a little bit about Meisner. He had a brother. His brother was a little bit, from everything I've read, a little bit of a hustler. And so Addison Meisner with his brother are the ones who went forward and ultimately created Boca Raton. Let's see.